Guild Wars, one of my most cherished childhood memories together with RuneScape and Borderlands, and a couple other games. Welcome ladies and gentlemen, Master of None here. Today I want to talk to you about Guild Wars, the original. Since I recently started making videos on GW2, I also needed occasional footage from the first game. Running through the old world, I couldn't resist the urge to make a dedicated video about this gem of a game. What made it so good? Why did I pick up this game at 11 years old? And more importantly, what can other MMOs learn from it even to this day? To answer those questions, let me briefly explain what Guild Wars 1 is. Guild Wars is an online role-playing game from ArenaNet that was released in April 2005. I'm avoiding the term MMO here deliberately because even though you could see hundreds of players in cities, as soon as you went out adventuring, it was just you and your party. It was an instance game with all the cities being hubs where players could meet and team up to go on an adventure together. Back in high school, Guild Wars was the type of game that you got when there was no way your parents would pay for a World of Warcraft subscription. After having experienced the wonders of online gaming in RuneScape, I was ready to jump into a new world. I found Guild Wars like I found all games back then, going through a big pile of CD cases at the toy store. And there it was. I'm getting shivers down my spine just looking at that box art. I have so many good memories with this game. So anyway, I come home from the store and try to install it on my grandparents' computer. They didn't even have a mouse back then, just some weird joystick looking thing where, even set to the highest speed, getting your mouse cursor from one end to the screen to the other would take about 20 seconds. Still, installation went kind of smoothly, disregarding the fact that it took about 5 hours to download. I hit the character screen and got presented with my first choice, making a role-playing or a PvP character. Honestly, I don't think 11-year-old me knew the difference, so I made a PvP character because role-playing didn't sound as cool. I end up in this place called the Zaijian Challenge. For the longest time, I thought this was the game. You could queue up and fight these bots in some PvP practice matches. I didn't really dare to fight against real people, so I never left that place. It was pretty fun since I got to unlock new skills and learned about a tactic from a friendly player where you would just equip a bunch of traps and nuke all NPCs instantly. After about 2 weeks or so, I had enough of the arena fighting though and stopped playing. I don't remember how long it exactly took, but all of a sudden school friends started talking about Guild Wars. This is when I picked it back up again, intrigued and confused by them talking about a huge world while the only thing that I ever saw was some arena mode. And this time I created a PvE character, a dervish, and the real journey began. Guild Wars is so unique in its gameplay and mechanics that there really isn't anything like it to this day. It's also the reason why some hardcore GW1 players heavily dislike the second game. While the core philosophies have stayed mostly the same, everything else has been changed. Guild Wars was heavily inspired by Magic the Gathering. Instead of collecting cards, you would essentially collect skills. With over 2,000 skills in the game, there were near endless possibilities for weird and wacky builds for you to discover. There were 10 different professions to choose from, and pretty soon after character creation, you would get to choose a second profession. So your necromancer could then also be a monk and equip monk skills, for example. Thanks to your necromancer's passives, you were getting energy whenever an enemy died. Energy is basically the Guild Wars equivalent of mana, allowing you to be a great healer with very expensive healing skills. I absolutely adore this system, but I am not surprised at all that ArenaNet decided to not take this over to the second game. It was incredibly hard to balance. Speaking of balance, Guild Wars was primarily built with PvP in mind. Even though most of my time was spent in PvE, there were 7 different PvP game modes to choose from, all feeling very distinct. Probably the most accessible one was Random Arenas. This was a 4v4 with solo queue only. The catch was, when your random team won the match, you wouldn't instantly get disbanded, and instead you would play against a different team, trying to keep your win streak up for as long as possible and getting more and more points in the process. I love this mode since it always felt really casual to get into, but could get very serious once you got matched with a strong team and got the streak going. Another standout to me was the much less popular Codex Arena. This was another 4v4 mode, but you would only have a very limited and random selection of skills to choose from. This meant that every time a new skill selection came out, you tried to figure out which classes would be able to make the strongest build with that limited pool. The Buildcraft was so fun, although I'm sure that I was terrible at it. I'll only mention one more game mode to showcase the variety, otherwise this video will become way too long. Alliance Battles, my absolute favorite. This mode was released with the Guild Wars faction campaign and determines where the faction borders are in Kantha. You queue up as a team of 4 and then get put together with 2 other teams, making it a 12v12. The mechanics were similar to how Conquest works in Guild Wars 2. You get points for kills and holding nodes. Instead of capture points though, you would have shrines which were defended by NPCs. This allowed for a great variety of builds. One of your team members might be especially good at capping shrines and dealing with the NPCs, while others may focus more on killing players or healing. This blend of PvP with PvE was so much fun for me, and I loved trying out all the different builds. Having 7 PvP game modes also came with a drawback though. It spread the player base quite thin, and it's the main reason ArenaNet decided to launch GW2 with just one game mode. I personally think this is a shame and never really experienced it that much as a problem, due to how the bonus events work that would be active every week. A specific game mode would give you double the rewards and thus attract a lot more players for that time. This made Guild Wars 1 PvP incredibly fun and varied. On top of that, you also had a daily PvP mission which would further increase the population. It's the typical 180 ArenaNet likes to do, which I always disliked. I'm glad that we now have at least off-season 2v2s in Guild Wars 2 to change it up a bit, but it's still quite sad how they completely abandoned Stronghold without trying to iterate or improve it. Anyways, back to Guild Wars 1. Let's quickly talk about the business model. Similar to its successor, it did not have a subscription fee. Unlike GW2 though, the in-game cash shop was extremely bare bones with very little amount of things to buy. Instead, ArenaNet would release a new expansion every 6 to 12 months. It just blows my mind how they were able to produce so much content in such a short time, with so much longevity, considering that people are still playing the same thing 16 years later. It's truly remarkable. Guild Wars 1 really nailed the reward structure as well. There were rare skins to farm, mini pets to collect, titles to go for, speedruns to learn, and on and on. What made it especially satisfying was the great mix of long and short-term goals you could pursue. As an example, a medium-term goal might have been to max out a title by completing every story mission in hard mode. When you finally got there and were proudly displaying it, you noticed another title appear, for which you had to max out as many titles as possible. I love this about Guild Wars. It managed to hook you so elegantly, without having a gear treadmill. My favorite thing about Guild Wars 1 was the genius decision for most of the PvE enemies to use the same skills and abilities that the player could use. This had many benefits. First of all, it helped you get familiar with a ton of skills, even if you never used them yourself. It taught you important concepts like that you should probably focus the healer down first, or which skill was dangerous and needed to be interrupted. It had the amazing benefit of making it way easier to get into PvP. The early parts of the game were almost like a tutorial to prepare you for PvP. It got more difficult as you progressed through the story though, up to a point where PvE really offered a different kind of challenge and required a very different type of buildcraft. An amusing side effect to this system was that if a skill got completely changed or reworked, it could make a PvE area way harder all of a sudden, because the enemies were using the same skills as the player. I can't recall if this ever had a ginormous impact on an area, but I wanted to mention it either way. To sum it all up, The original Guild Wars had so many unique elements that you won't find in any other game up to this date. It is a completely different beast compared to Guild Wars 2, and they have very little in common. I wish other MMOs could learn something in terms of creativity when it comes to PvP game modes, the satisfying rewards, the extremely fair business model, and how enemies in the open world used player skills. Thankfully, the servers are still up and running, and if ArenaNet is to be believed, they will still be up for a long time after this video has been released. It apparently doesn't cost a lot of money to keep it going. So if you're someone that can enjoy older games, I can wholeheartedly recommend it. Just make sure to change your district to America at the top left of your screen, because that is where all the players congregate nowadays. There is so much more to say about Guild Wars 1, for example on how the PvE mission system worked, or how there was an activity called Vanquishing, where your goal was to kill every last enemy on the map for rewards and titles. But I chose to focus on the things that were most important to me. So to finish up this video, I have a question to all the Guild Wars 1 players out there. What is your favorite thing about Guild Wars? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.